Namaste and welcome to another episode of Questioning Mind. I'm your host Sagarika, and today I'm rejoined by Raja Muneeb, and he's the best person to cover the attacks that happened in Kashmir recently, as well as Bilawal Bhutto's um, meeting in Goa and his um, current ongoing dialogues. So we'll have to understand what can be asserted from his visit to India. And I think it's his first visit, right? It's his first visit. It's the first visit by any Pakistani minister in years. So it can be quite interesting. So those are the two topics. We'll keep this episode short. And Muneeb, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sagrika. Pleasure to be with you again.
All right, so let's begin with the attacks on the army vehicles in Kashmir in Rajouri that happened last week. What information do we have, and have the perpetrators been caught and eliminated? Do we expect such attacks to become the norm again in Kashmir?
Uh, see, this particular belt is seeing a lot of trouble for last. I won't say a lot of trouble, but is seeing attacks. Punch and Rajouri belt. We saw an attack in January in Dangri where, the families of Hindus were singled out and then shot. 5 people were shot there. 6 people lost their lives. Rajouri, the terrain in this particular area where the attack has happened is very, very treacherous. And when I say that, what I mean is it's very dense forests, it's natural caves, it's very close to the border. So infiltrating is comparatively easier at times for people from across the border for the terrorists. And in this particular case, also, what police has told us till now is that it's a group of 9 to 11 people who infiltrated to this side of the border and have carried out the attack on the army. This attack has happened, very close to the army establishment camp, somewhere in between, which is a bit surprising because this terrain is usually covered by road opening parties, and it's well protected off. But somehow at this hour, the road opening parties were not present, and they took advantage of that fact and they attacked this vehicle. What also is happened in this attack is that it seems to be a very well calibrated attack. And when I say that, what I mean is, if you look at the kind of ammunition they have used armor piercing steel bullets, right? So and they have used magnetic IDs for blowing up the tanks, which eventually led to the army vehicle catching fire. So there is trouble in the area. Punch Rajouri belt, because of the terrain, it's very, very difficult to have foolproof infiltration grade. There are instances of people crossing over. It has happened in 2021. We saw an operation which was done by the army in Nimbar Valley and adjoining areas. We lost about 9 Jawans that time also in that operation. It lasted for about a month and a half. And then we have seen that. This was 2021.
Right, okay.
Right. So on and off, there has been presence of Pakistani terrorists in these areas, and they have been able to carry out successfully attacks against the Indian Army in this area.
So, I understand that it's a very difficult terrain, and Jammu and Kashmir is, of course, fraught with issues. It's just that, one would expect that the security systems work better. We've seen targeted killings of Hindus, not just in Kashmir, but even in districts of Jammu, some cities of Jammu. So, and now we see an attack on the army itself, which is, something that we should be pretty afraid of. And I think it's not that usual to hear of these episodes anymore. So of course that does go to show that the security system is better than it used to be, but it's also not as good as it should be. So what are we lacking apart from you? There's so much development in terms of the infrastructure. We're doing roads to enable the army movements to be a lot more fluid than they were able to be so previously. But what is being done to kind of counter these challenges?
So there are a lot of things which are being done on the security front. You have right now you have a special operations group, police forces. You have army special operation groups manning carrying out recce in the area. You have quadcopters. You have drones for counter surveillances, but no counter surveillance or no counter infiltration measures are absolutely foolproof or 100% proof, 100% secure. There are always loopholes, and people from across the border, they always try to exploit those loopholes and then make use of them. So that seems to be the case in this particular incident also. And let's not forget why this is happening, Sagrika. It is happening because Kashmir is set to host the G20 summit, which is happening on from 22nd of May, right? And Pakistan is desperate because if you see the rhetoric on social media, the rhetoric in their press about India hosting G20 in Kashmir, it's a big deal for them, and they are trying their best to derail this G20. They don't want that G20 should happen in Kashmir, and they are ready to go to any extent. So that is why you are seeing these kind of attacks happening in Kashmir. So there is already a security input that attacks might happen, or they
Right.
might try to disrupt peace in the valley. So it's a given. So it's come at that point of time where the G20 is just a few days ago, just about maybe 15 days, left there, 15 days more.
Right. Well, I'm sure that the foreign delegates have nothing to fear. It's just that the Indian citizens should have that same security as well. But anyway, let's move on. It was a very sad episode, and it's been a it's. I don't think people are that used to seeing five army people. Being killed in that situation. It's been quite a while, thank goodness for that. But that it's not so often, but it's not that usual anymore. So, let's move on to Bilawal Bhutto. What do you make of his being allowed to come to Goa and make those? He also messed up one of his statements recently. Um,
He just messed up today morning when he was coming.
yeah,
He said,
so he was
I'm meeting the
talking about
Malik and then
Malik.
Mumalik. So yeah, he messed up. He messed up there as well. But that's typical Bilawal Bhutto, and that's typical Pakistan. But look, I don't make much out of it, and I'll tell you why.
Mm,
There is no bilateral going to be between India and Pakistan. That is a given. It's not happening, right? Looking at Pakistan, if you look at the visit of how the MOS foreign minister went to Russia
right.
alone without a delegation because you're saying paucity of funds, and they were asked by the Russians, like, where is the rest of the delegation? And look at why Bilawal is coming. Bilawal is only coming for posturing. Why?
Right.
Because China is significant in SEO summits, right? It's the Shanghai Corporation thing. So it's more to do with the Chinese and to show their allegiance to the Chinese more than to do with actual foreign policy of Pakistan. Given at a time, look at the way the IMF loans have not gone through. They're still asking them to increase repo rates. Pakistan economy is in a flux, complete. And I don't see Pakistan having any major say diplomatically on anything. Whether it is maybe they will rake up the G20 issue. Why is it happening in Kashmir? But I don't see Pakistan uh, having any significant kind of engagement on the sidelines in Goa. I think it's more theatrics for them rather than any meaningful visit for the foreign minister. And let's not forget that he insulted the prime minister, our honorable prime minister, just a few months ago, right? So the Indians are going to give him a very very cold shoulder. He's not going to be welcomed, and we have seen the joint secretary level of officer from the MEA has actually gone ahead and received him. So that tells you that where Pakistan stands in our list of diplomacy and foreign policy.
No, that certainly makes sense. It's just that should he have been allowed? Like, I know it's the SEO, and so it's not really India hosting him. It's just that he's on he's coming on behalf of Pakistan to participate in SEO, and it just happens to be in India at this time. It's just that it seems you can understand that the media coverage from Pakistan is going to portray this as a huge breaking development for either India Pakistan relationships, though I doubt that, but more from the perspective of they're finally getting somewhere in negotiations. India had to let them in with that whole Russian that they usually portray. So yeah, that's what do you think? Yeah.
I don't think that there is any reason for India to hold on to not allow him. I mean that would look very bad on the part of India on the diplomatic front and on the foreign policy front. I think the best is to have him here and give him a cold shoulder and completely ignore their existence, and that is by and large how I see it's going to be. because
Right.
to expect that you won't let the foreign minister come. I don't think that works in diplomatic parlance. I don't think that's how
Doesn't
diplomacy works,
doesn't.
right?
Right.
So that notion that he should not have been here at the first place should not have happened.
Right.
So yeah, so I mean that's fault. That's falsy.
Do you have any foresight into what we can expect from the SCO meets?
Not really. I don't see any big headways happening there. I will be keeping a very close eye on the bilateral if that happens between the Indian foreign minister and the Chinese foreign minister. That is something to be watched for because we have been engaging in talks on our border issues with them.
Right.
We recently had a core commander level talks in Ladakh just a few weeks ago between for de-escalation. So I think that is certainly on the agenda, and that would be certainly on the agenda for both the countries. But apart from that, I don't see any major development. On the outset of the SEO, I don't see anything major happening
All right.
unless
Well,
Pakistan has made some statement and it has a big backlash. You never know. Maybe they might try to be flamboyant in their own sense or try to
right.
disrupt in some way or the other, or use Kashmir as a leverage. Or they might play the spoilers, but that's something to be to watch out for.
I'm not sure that Kashmir offers Pakistan any leverage at this time, though, right? After Article 370 being abrogated.
No, Kashmir
Uh,
doesn't offer any leverage. It's in their minds that
yeah, it's
Kashmir is a leverage. The
right.
problem is they're too obsessed with Pakistan, with Kashmir, and their obsession has no bounds. It just doesn't stop. Whether it's their intelligentsia, whether it's their media, whether it's their politicians, it's just that I don't know which realm of light they're living into. I mean, they're,
It's
they're
a
at that
good
reality.
distraction, right, from all of the issues that affect Pakistan today, from people. It's a very desperate humanitarian situation in Pakistan, and that's something that simply does not get covered enough, even in their media, because they have to constantly portray a sort of false optimism that is completely unreal. I think even their media caters to a section of Pakistan that lives abroad or lives in the poshest areas of Lahore and Karachi and are purely Punjabi. So they don't bother to cover the ground on ground situations, and I'm sure that the foreign media also picks up from them, which makes things all the worse because people don't actually know, even with regards to the situation of minorities in Pakistan. That's pretty horrible every single day, and there are some people doing very good work on the ground covering the disappearance and forced conversions of Sindhi and Baloch and Hindu minority girls and women, and the disappearance of the men. But it's something that's completely not showcased at all.
No, but the problem with Pakistani media is that it's not completely independent. It's tightly
Of course
controlled by
not.
the establishment, right? So to keep a foot away from the establishment and to go against the establishment, and it's a risk in itself. We have seen disappearances of journalists in Pakistan. We have seen assassinations of journalists in Pakistan on the same lines because they would not follow the establishment line or would question them somehow one way or the other. So to expect Pakistani media to be a fair media which will
Of
report,
course.
without biases, I think that's a Herculean task. I think no, that's not going to happen because it's a tightly controlled establishment driven kind of narrative, and there's only a limit to what you can say. Beyond that, it's trouble for any journalist. They won't cross that line.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, sorry, you just mentioned narratives, and this wasn't planned, but I just remember that Rana Ayub is being platformed in the UN, and I just wondered what you thought of it. On World
Look,
Press Freedom,
Rana
by the
Ayub,
way.
honestly, what Rana Ayub didn't, Rana Ayub, okay. Lesser said the better, but this is what I'm going to say. The problem with Rana Ayub is she's called somebody a lawmaker who has been India's biggest lawbreaker, who has 165 FIRs against him, has cases of murder, plunder, loot, and rape across communities, Hindus as well as Muslims.
Exactly.
One
I,
of the
I I
most
was going
wanted
to point out that
gangsters.
the rapes are of Muslim girls, not minor
Yeah,
girls, right?
of the
So
especially the case of those two minor girls in the madrasa in UP
in the
where he
madrasa,
wanted to take the
yes.
land, he got them raped. That is the dichotomy of Rana Ayub. I mean, that is where you can say how dishonest Rana Ayub as a person is. I've never seen such a morally dishonest person in my life. A person who cannot call a spade, who cannot call a gangster. I mean, a lawbreaker becomes a lawmaker for her just because she wants to get mileage. And the lies she spreads. I mean, 20 crore Muslims are being persecuted daily in India. For God's sake, tell me where? Where is this happening? Rana Ayub doesn't talk about people, getting persecuted in Pakistan. Rana Ayub doesn't talk about people getting persecuted in Xinjiang in China. Rana Ayub doesn't talk about people getting persecuted anywhere else. But Rana Ayub says that I don't know tomorrow if I go to India, I will be there, but I love this country and I want to be there. I mean, what bigger bigotry, what bigger dichotomy there can be between the two statements. Imagine a woman living under Taliban going to US, telling them how bad Taliban is, and would never go back to Afghanistan, would never want to, would use each and every. But Rana Ayub goes to US, says that we are being persecuted, but I love my country and I want to come back to my country. I mean, what kind of an analogy is that? And how can the audience, which is sitting at UNESCO, can actually go ahead and accept that kind of a narrative? Nobody questions her. Nobody questions this the duplicity of her statements. Nobody questions the veracity of her claims. Nobody has tried to do that. So it's a complete fake narrative peddler. And let's not forget that she herself is, given a remand from the court. She has swindled money, public money. So she's basically playing on the sympathies, taking money for herself, making her life rich, and portraying everybody else as a villain and everybody else as a victim, which is not true of this country. She's, I have no words to describe Rana Ayub. It's just thuggery. It's
Nice.
thuggery, basically thuggery, nothing else. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's just also terrible because I was speaking with somebody who, US folks very often do not have, in fact, all of the Western world, even if you listen to the French or the Germans, and I've actually analyzed their, publications. They are given a very one-sided view about India, and honestly, if you approach the country in a certain way, you typically expect exactly those things. Even if you were to visit, you would only see the slums. Now, if you constantly are fed the images of San Francisco breaking out in random fights, and the drugged felons roaming about the streets free, and the gunfights all the time happening in San Francisco, and you judge an entire country by what happens there, and you forget all of the innovations and the growth that they've given to the world. It's exactly how India is portrayed in every Western publication. And so the audience is completely prepared to only listen to something like what Rana Ayub says, and anything that is against their main narrative is something that they will find very hard to digest. So, and they certainly do not platform people who don't bring in an aspect of outrage, especially on World Press Freedom Day,
No,
right?
but that
And
is the biggest
we are
fraud. I
apparently
mean,
behind the Taliban in our press freedom ranking. So,
no, this is the biggest fraud of the left. This is the biggest fraud of the left, to peddle fake narratives, to lie about everything, to play a victimization card, to ghettoize a certain community and say that they are being victimized or persecuted. This is the typical fraud of the left. This is a typical fraud, and this is what they have been perpetrating from decades since they have lost power. I mean, it's just reaching, it's crossing those abnormal levels day in and day out. I mean, the statement she made, no sane person would analyze that. If you're a journalist and if you're a true journalist, you owe the truth to the people, and not to the people of the country, but also to the people of the rest of the world. You needed to tell them the truth that the man, look, nobody's saying that what happened with Atiq or the way he was assassinated is justified, right? But you cannot paint him a holy figure who was a lawmaker, who was doing very well for the country, and who was, taken about because he was a Muslim. He was taken down by somebody because he was a gangster who had committed crimes, a gangster who had committed murders, right?
it
So
was
yes,
likely
you
a
can say
personal matter, right?
government wouldn't do that, but at the end of the day, to portray a criminal man, a lawbreaker into a lawmaker. Now, what kind of an image refurbishment is that? Isn't that is fraud? You're essentially doing fraud with your own journalism, with your own profession. You're a fraud. You're not a journalist. That's
How
what
do
I
you
would say.
make somebody like that accountable?
How do you make people like these accountable? There has to be some accountability, absolutely, on misinformation, on disinformation. But how do you, somebody who brazenly goes and lies on, world platforms, somebody who brazenly spreads misinformation and disinformation, I mean, what do you do with them?
Right.
I'm at loss. I mean, it's the wisdom of the audience also to put the questions in, to go in and research and ask them, hey, what's the story on this side? This is the story which was published. This is what he had done. Then come across and say. But then, if you're talking to a mute audience who are going to take whatever you're going to tell them and going to believe it, then I guess the fault is on the other side as well. It's the fault of the
Absolutely,
people too.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, Muneeb, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. I'll look forward to next time as well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sagrika. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.